My father waited until everyone was seated before he decided to humiliate me. He lifted his wine glass, smiled at our relatives, and said that in every family there's one child who contributes, and one who just consumes. The room laughed. I didn't, because what no one at that table knew, not my sister, not my mother, not even my father, was that 6 months earlier, I had quietly purchased the debt attached to this house, and that night, he was mocking the only person who could legally take it away. The dining room smelled of roasted rosemary and polished wood. My mother had arranged the table, as if presentation could compensate for tension. My sister sat to my father's right naturally. She always occupied the seat closest to approval. I took the end of the table. The position of the observer. When you grow up as the scapegoat child, you learn early that survival depends on silence. You measure tone. You study posture. You anticipate impact. My father's comment wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed. He enjoyed social hierarchy. He needed an audience. What he didn't enjoy was uncertainty. And that evening, uncertainty was already sitting at the table. My sister inherited charm. I inherited responsibility. When the family business began collapsing 3 years ago, I was the one who analyzed the numbers. I was the one who warned them about unsustainable debt. They dismissed me when foreclosure notices started arriving. They panicked. That's when I stepped in quietly, through a private holding company. I acquired the distressed loan from their lender at a discount, legally, transparently, without announcing it. I didn't do it to control them. I did it to prevent public collapse. But control is a fragile thing, and once someone realizes they no longer possess it, they react. After the main course, my father stood again. He announced that my sister would officially take over the business. Applause followed. Then he added something unexpected. To support the transition, he said, "We're refinancing the house to inject liquidity." Refinancing. The word moved through the room like cold air. I set my fork down. Which institution is handling the refinance? I asked calmly. He waved dismissively. The primary lender. I met his eyes. There is no primary lender anymore. Silence. I purchased the debt portfolio 6 months ago. My mother blinked. My sister laughed too quickly. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The legal documentation was already filed. The room shifted. Hierarchy, once stable, had just tilted. My father's expression hardened. You went behind our backs. I prevented the bank from doing worse, I replied. He accused me of manipulation. My sister accused me of jealousy. It was predictable when narcissistic control is threatened. The first response is moral outrage. But outrage doesn't change contracts. I wasn't interested in humiliation. I was interested in leverage. The argument escalated. My father threatened to cut me out of the will. My sister implied I had always resented her success. I listened. Then I reminded them of something simple. As the secured creditor, I have the right to approve or deny refinancing. If you proceed without consent, it triggers a default clause. The air thinned. My father had built his authority on financial dominance. Now, he understood that dominance was conditional, but the evening wasn't finished, because he had prepared something. He signaled toward the hallway. Our family attorney stepped into the room. They had anticipated resistance. A document was placed before me, an agreement demanding that I transfer the loan back at face value. No interest. No conditions. I read every page, and I noticed something they hadn't. In drafting the document, they had acknowledged using corporate funds for personal asset maintenance, a violation of fiduciary responsibility. They had accidentally documented their own misconduct. I looked up slowly. Are you certain you want this reviewed in court? I asked. The attorney's jaw tightened. My father's confidence wavered. The power dynamic had shifted from emotional to legal, and legal is where I operate best. I slid the document back. I'm not interested in taking the house, I said. Shock flickered across their faces. I'm interested in restructuring, I outlined. Terms. Independent financial oversight. Spending caps. Transparent accounting. Shared decision-making authority. If they refused, I would exercise my right to call the loan and force asset liquidation. Not as revenge. Asset enforcement. Silence stretched longer than any argument. Finally, my father sat down. For the first time in my life, he wasn't the loudest person in the room. He was the most exposed. The party ended without dessert. Relatives left in quiet clusters. 2 weeks later, they signed the restructuring agreement. There was no apology. But something subtler occurred. Tone shifted. My father began consulting instead of commanding. My sister began asking instead of assuming. Control had not been destroyed. It had been redistributed. And that redistribution created something unfamiliar in that house. Balance. If you've ever been the child who was underestimated, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, understand this. Power doesn't need to shout. It needs preparation. That night, I didn't win by humiliating anyone. I won because I understood the structure financially, emotionally, legally. And once you understand the structure, you no longer fear the collapse. If this story resonated with you, let me know where you're listening from. And if you believe boundaries are not betrayal, but protection, stay with me. Some victories are quiet, but they change everything.